Oh, this is, as it turns out, this is episode 25 of this little interview show I've been doing since quarantine started. So it's also, I think, in looking at my notes, interview number 150 that I've done over the years for Dying Scene. So it's a pretty cool thing.
I like those kind of stats. I try to celebrate those 10s and 5s, and I was having an argument with my manager the other day about resolutions turning 10 and and celebrating that, and he was like, he had to pull out the Bruce Springsteen example. He was like, look, that guy just celebrates Darkness on the Edge of Town on the 22nd anniversary. Like, just get it out of your head that it's got to be the 10, 15 or 20 year.
Yeah.
So, but I'm with you. Like, when it's like it turns 100 or 50 or 10, I'm like, that's a big deal, for whatever reason.
It is. Yeah. It's we're on a base 10 number system, so 5s and 10s make sense, but it's also, so I sort of owe you, and we've talked about this a little bit before, a debt of thanks, really. You're the first guy that I sat down with in person years ago to do one of these interview things with. I had done a few email interviews before that, which I guess I count towards my tally, but that show backstage on the Flog and Wally tour before Devour was the first actual time I sat down with somebody and talked and did better than just an email interview. And I've always hated email interviews. So it was sort of like, that was the moment. And it was actually because of the way you answered the first question, which is a thing that I will always remember, is one of the reasons that I said, yep, there's a reason that I'm doing this interview thing. Because it was just an icebreaker question. How's tour going so far? And so you sort of half expect it's going good. The crowds have been good, da, da, da. And your answer was, it's been hard so far. And I thought from that minute, I said, this is why I'm doing it. Like just
right. If I would have gotten that in an email, I would have just given you the typical answer. Right. But you were probably, we were in the room together, and I probably looked hungover. So what was I gonna pretend? Oh, it's great. And I'm like, I remember being sort of like laying in the backstage trying to hydrate because, that tour, for whatever, for obvious reasons, like it's one of the most celebrated drinking bands, and I still drank back then.
Right.
They're old friends, and I was going hard in the paint then. So yeah, I that interview stands out to me as well, and I always look forward to talking to you about anything that you want to talk about. And think that you're good at it, so, and I think that. Like, there's no, I think in particular in the punk rock scene, there's not always, in my experience, there's not always been such an attention to detail when it comes to interviewing and all that. And your passion for the music that we all make comes through in the interview. You clearly listen and take stock of what's going on, and that is so appreciated. So yeah, I always look forward to talking to you.
I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you, especially. I think I chalk some of that up to being a Howard Stern fan over the years. And
me too.
Say what you will, obviously, about Howard Stern. I've been a fan forever, but the way that he interviewed, I think he's a brilliant interviewer.
He's fantastic.
And I don't know I don't get serious anymore, unfortunately, so I have to wait for interviews to come down the pike. But that interview he did with Eddie Vedder earlier this week was phenomenal.
I finished listening to that interview 15 minutes ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. It's great. His delivery is great. His questions are great. And he's funny. Even in the small little quips, Eddie Vedder at one point goes like, "Oh, I've got some Fugazi back there." And Howard goes, "Ah." He doesn't even know who Fugazi is, let alone care. But so I sort of listened for all of those small utterances and because like Howard's in control of what he's doing, and aware of how it's coming across. Yeah. In such a way that he knows someone's going to laugh at him going like, and that's me.
Right.
One interesting thing was I've toured the Howard Stern I've done the Howard Stern wrap-up show a
Yeah,
couple
yeah, yeah.
times, 2 or 3, and I got a tour of the whole studio. And
Wow.
one thing that's such a trip is he mixes the entire show as he's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as he's delivering it. So it would be like unto if we were playing our show and at the mixing desk able to oh, I need a little more snare. Like, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and which is an old school way of doing it.
Yeah, he's an old-fashioned radio guy.
So his craft is like, I mean, he's a master of every part of the craft, which is
Yeah.
like, those are the guys that in any part, those are the Trent Reznors and the Tom Pettys and the Joni Mitchells or whatever, like those are the truly mind-blowing masters of their discipline. But anyway, so I pick up on that you take interviewing seriously. It's probably because you've heard so many good interviews.
Well, and then I worked as in the substance abuse and mental health counseling for years. So you have to talk to people that way. And so if I can talk to people about, why they're in jail right now and looking to get into rehab, then I can talk to people about why they made their latest album. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the reasons that I started doing this early on in quarantine, which was 7 or 8 months ago at this point, was that I wanted to actually talk to people who were changing plans because of COVID, or were still releasing new music at the beginning of COVID, because there was such a dearth of information about what was actually going to happen. And so how can some of these people help to make up for their lost income? And yours is actually an interesting perspective going back that far, because you were actively on tour during the beginning of the shutdown. You were supposed to be down the road in Boston here. And so I wonder, I know that there's been 8 months since then at this point, which is bizarre. But if you can talk a little bit about just that sort of experience of being on the road at the very beginning of things shutting down and not really knowing how to sort of manage that, because everybody seemed to be left to their own devices about how to manage the shutdown before it became official and, okay, clubs have to shut down, states have to shut down, and how you sort of navigate that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a week of dominoes, really. My agent at the time was saying things like, well, it's not like Coachella's canceled and then Coachella canceled. And then he was like, it's not like Pearl Jam's tour is canceled and then Pearl Jam's tour canceled. And so that was all within a week. And the bizarre thing was, that tour was in my mind, sort of the end of the album. So it was a year after the record came out. It was sort of like, let's play the biggest clubs we think we can play, see if we can fill them. And it was going really, really well. In fact, the weekend before everything shut down, we had our biggest show ever in Toronto, our biggest show ever in Chicago.
Wow.
So we were getting these messages like, hey, this is bad, we should be shutting down. And then droves of people were coming out to the shows. And so it was really confusing. And at that point, I started to think about it more like, oh, maybe it's my turn to be responsible for these people. In other words, like, they're coming, and maybe I'm sending a transmission that it's safe to come by showing up.
Right.
So it's really confusing. I was ambivalent with each passing day. We got through that weekend. We played Montreal on a Sunday, and then we had 4 shows left. We had New York, Boston, Baltimore, and Philly, which are our biggest shows.
Yeah.
And we played New York the night before my birthday. So it was March 11th. And we had sold almost all the tickets, and then like 150 or something people who had tickets didn't come.
Oh, wow.
Which tripped me out. Like, it was like, oh man, people opted not to come and they bought tickets. Like, something's really wrong. And during our set, like, we got off stage and the Explosion guys were opening the last 4. So they're old dear friends who were concerned. They were like, hey, the NBA shut down while you guys were on. And while we were on stage. So, and I sort of had a feeling that we maybe shouldn't be doing the New York show. And said as much on stage. Like I was like, hey, let's dance while we still can, or something like that, something where it felt like this was going to be it for a while.
Yeah.
I thought we could squeak out the last few, but I wasn't sure if that was responsible. So the next morning we got a call that Philly was canceled, and then, and everyone was still sort of playing, what can we get away with?
Yeah.
Well, Philly's canceled, but you can still go to Boston. I was like, wait a second. It's a virus. Like,
right.
It's just if Philly's shutting down, it means Boston maybe should, or is going to tomorrow or whatever. And I don't want anybody's blood on my hands. I don't, like, for what,
Right.
And so it was devastating financially and in terms of like feeling like we really wanted to put our best foot forward. But again, like, neither of those things matter in the end. Your professional ambition or whatever, or your money, or not, or your that immediate surge of money or whatever it was going to be, certainly isn't worth it if somebody gets sick or gets someone else sick. It's like, hey, let's figure this out. So yeah, it was brutal. It was a hard week. I was relieved, as much as I was sad and scared to shut it down. I was relieved to not have that moral weight on. And we sort of did it right before everybody did it. And then it was home. So yeah, it hasn't been 8 months. Yeah. It's
already. Cause it's the second week of November.
Sure is.
It's we had 4 or 5 inches of snow last week, and now we're going to have 70 degrees for a week. So it's clearly November in New England.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. We're just getting our cool blast. We should get rain for the first time. And maybe this year, here in Santa Barbara. So, that's what everyone's bracing for this weekend, is like, not 70-degree weather. It'll be like 62 and it'll rain. So everyone will get their Patagonia jackets out.
What a switch from living on the East Coast, though, isn't it? Like,
it is, man. It is. It's bizarrely different. I'm used to it as much as I can be. So much so now that neither place feels entirely normal to me.
Yeah.
But because my kids and wife are here, it's home.
How affected by the wildfires were you? Because that's another thing that has sort of come down the pike since
affected.
This all started.
Just insofar as the sky was smoky and there was ash and stuff. You could smell. There were days where we had to keep the windows closed, but we were far from any actual fire. Thank God. We're right by the ocean here, where our house is. So basically the whole town would have to burn down for a fire to get here, or an ember would have to fly, and then the neighborhood could catch. So it's dangerous, but not quite as dangerous as places in the foothills and things like that. But we were affected just in that there's changing tides in California of the way people are migrating and the way, people are moving. And, but thankfully we were spared any actual fire here in our town or neighborhood.
Well, having to stay inside because we're all quarantined, and I know different people have different thoughts about how inside they want to stay. We've been one of those families that's tried to stay largely inside as much as we can. But being forced to stay inside, but at least you can open windows. But when you've got ash and fire and things raining down on you, that sort of forces you. You can't even go out in your front yard and enjoy the fresh air because there isn't fresh air. So that's got to do things to you mentally and physically.
Yeah, it's given me, it's given me a real ambivalence about staying here. There's a fire season, and that's not a season.
Yeah,
it's terrifying to me, and it's normalized by Californians. What else can they do? They've invested all their money in their homes and stuff, and we rent, so I'm kind of like, let's go. let's go.
Right.
I know it's cold over there
Right.
on the East Coast, but it doesn't burn down
Right.
in large swaths of. So yeah, there's a lot to manage. I mean, what the biggest challenge for me is just a daily steadiness that I'm trying to have for my, not only just for myself but for my kids. So when those things kind of blow into your mind, and the year we've had presses down on you, my job is to keep that weight off my kids, and to keep my mood secure. And because most of my year's been childcare. So it's a hard job. It's a hard job to raise kids in any capacity, but to do it when you're forced into these constraints and have these pressures, all of the stuff that's pressing down on us is has been hard. So therapy and trying to take it one day at a time is, and really, to not to be a like sort of a promotional heel, but the act of recording those songs was really therapeutic. It was something to do. It was something to tinker with. It was it was like being an interpreter was different for me, like solely looking at it like I'm interpreting instead of I'm writing, and I have this to say and so on. And it was really fun, to start to make progress and get emails from Tim every day of like, oh, here's a little guitar part, or here's this, that was really fun. And I've missed that in the subsequent months of getting it uploaded and promoting it and all that. Like that stuff is less and less appealing to me. The making of it was really fun.
Where did the idea come from, and how long had that been sort of floating around?
For years, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because of someone said when I recorded a random cover of Minimum Wage as a gateway drug years ago, I put it up on YouTube, and somebody said, you should make a Dillinger Four covers album. And
I've seen that comment. Yeah,
I'll pay $100 or something.
Yeah, right.
And I thought, I could really use $100. No. I thought, wow, actually I would love to do that. They're one of my favorite bands, and how would I pick the songs kind of thing if I were to do that. And so I just ran that little idea around and thought, well, what if I just covered the Patty songs?
Yeah.
And then thought, well, wait a second, Patty is the same name as my actual favorite songwriter.
Yeah.
That would be cool to hold on one second. I just gotta get rid of that call. It would be cool to record a record of each and have them come out on the same day and compare and contrast, and just because they happen to have the same name. And it was one of those things I would have never gotten around to, because I just would have toured and gotten home and rested and toured again, and then, oh my God, I have songs, and let's record them and let's write them. And
the hamster wheel. To
some degree, yeah. It would have been hard to tap out long enough to focus on something like that. I mean, I have a bunch of things like that. There's a whole record that I wrote during the writing of Bury Me in Philly that I never put out.
Finished. Yeah, right.
There's like, 2 whiteboards worth of song ideas that some of them are recorded and some of them aren't. There's always this extra material and different ideas that thus far, because of just the path you end up on, if this is going to be your job, not all of it sees the light of day. So this would have probably gone like that. And I wasn't ready. I guess I wasn't really ready to write new songs and put them out, because we can't tour on them.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I have new songs, and Tim has new songs, and we've been getting to work. But I just wanted to put something out that had not as much, I don't know, weight to it. It was something you could just enjoy, and I didn't have like a ton riding on it. It was a celebration of 2 songwriters I love and exercise and recording and stuff. And then it sounded pretty good. And I thought, well, let's do this. So it was almost something that could have been buried in the yard, we recorded this and then it didn't do anything with it. But my agent was like, or my manager was like, look, you're the only person on planet Earth that loves these two songwriters with the equal.
Yeah.
Like that's something specific to you. Like put it out.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the journey of it. But yeah, it was really fun. I'm sort of looking with the election now, looking like it's going to go in the direction that might allow me to go back to work next year at some point or the year after. It'll sort of change what we decide to put out. That's the thing I think often that is that's like the better way to phrase the question. People go like, well, how do you decide what songs land where? And or what, I guess the question always is like, how do you write for each project or whatever? And it's not differently, you just write whatever's coming.
Yeah.
It's how you select what you want to put out and when. That's different. And I think like that's we're looking at for next year. I'd love to do like 3 more of these kinds of things, like where we reimagine stuff or interpret things and not be as on the hook for the songs for a minute. Because I just feel like we need a break, and we can't tour anyway. So right. Who knows? We'll see.
I think one thing that sort of came across in listening to the Patty Costello, the Dillinger Four songs, I don't know that it dawned on me before how influential he's been to your songwriting. But hearing his songs written like yours, like Minimum Wage is a Gateway Drug, hearing those songs done in your style, I kind of went, oh, yeah, no, I totally get it now. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. He is a big influence, and they were a big influence on me. They, at the end of the day, they're probably my favorite punk rock band. I mean, to such a degree that when I toured with Kid Dynamite as the T-shirt seller, we got to a snowy, just half-finished Triple Rock in 1998.
Wow.
And we're having some food there, and Eric was hanging with us because he knew Dan from Lifetime or whatever. And my old band had played a show with Dillinger Four, so we had met in Philadelphia. But I mean, I was such a fan that I asked them if we could go into their trailer, which was covered in snow. We had to dig it out for like a T-shirt and a pin. And he was like, "Really, dude? Like,
yeah.
Oh, can I send it to you?" And I was like, no, it's like right there in the trailer. Like, well, let's go. I'll dig it out. Right. I was that into it.
It's like getting a Phillies hat at the vet.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah. And I was 20 then. And so, even 22 years later to still have that amount of excitement and fervor for those songs is saying something. So that's cool. I think that Patty Griffin's impact on my songwriting is probably more, maybe more felt than traceable. You know what I mean? Like you can sort of see what the feeling that she's going for is kind of, I maybe if I'm doing my job correctly, that's felt by the listener, but I don't write as much like she does, It's probably closer to like lyrically or the way things are structured and stuff, be more along the lines of what Patty does. I'm not sure. Patty Costello. So yeah.
Where did the love of Patty Griffin come from? I think you and Brian Fallon really are the two that I have heard most talk about Patty Griffin and a love of her songwriting over the years, at least from our scene. But where does that stem from?
I had a girlfriend in high school turn me on to her first record, Living with Ghosts. And I kind of stayed with her. She was a really celebrated songwriter on WXBN, which is a radio station in Philly. They were really behind her at the time, and that all led up to my mom getting sick and eventually dying of cancer. And her records, for whatever reason, my sisters and I all really loved her. And so A Thousand Kisses was super comforting during the time that my mom was sick. I think it was like just one of those artists we all loved and agreed on, like my sisters and I, and that, you know how that goes, like when you go through a hard time and then there's a certain record or certain artist that helps ease your mind, like they stay with you forever.
Yeah.
And so Patty's that for me. Like, honestly, I got to meet her at a show. We were trying to get her to sing on the second Lovelands record. And
oh, wow.
And Dave Walsh, his ex-wife, had done some tailoring. So she was a tailor for the Stars or whatever. So she had made some dresses for Patty Griffin and gotten to know her. And so she brought me to a show in Central Park that Patty played, and I got to meet her. And honestly, I was so starstruck. I was more starstruck meeting her than meeting, like, Metallica or even Bruce Springsteen. Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm in the presence of emotional greatness.
Right.
Like a true healer,
Right.
Not that I wasn't with those other people, but for whatever reason, like I didn't even know what to say to her. I was like stopped in my tracks, and I got to meet her again in Los Angeles, like, maybe 6 years ago or something. And it wasn't dissimilar. It was I still was kind of like, oh my God. Because she's just had such an impact on my life. She's more than a favorite artist. She's like someone I go to comfort me in times of sadness. So
how did you pick Patty Griffin songs to cover? That seems like, because she's such a heavyweight, a songwriting heavyweight, that seems like almost that it would be intimidating to go through, and especially to pick a song like Poor Man's House or Top of the World. Like, hearing your versions of those, it gives a different spin on the songs, which is, in the case of Poor Man's House, as I thought, sort of haunting. But how did you pick songs, and was it intimidating to try to do justice to her songs?
Yeah, it was. I started the project strumming guitar, acoustic guitar, and piano and stuff, and sent them to Tim. And Tim was like, yeah, these are cool, but I mean, listen to what the original is. It's someone with a voice, an otherworldly voice. Like, you wouldn't want to cover Adele either, because she's just got this magnificent voice, and Tim didn't have to say it, but the subtext is, I don't. And so he was like, why don't we rethink how we're approaching these Patty Griffin songs and do them electric? And I was like, electric? What do you mean? Like, what? He was like, well, think about the guy that you were when you were touring with Flogging Molly or opening for Social Distortion. It was you and an electric guitar and an acoustic guitar, but you were playing, rhythmically, this sort of Billy Bragg thing, and delivering your vocal over top of it in keys that were comfortable to you. And you had your little hat on and your little spiel. And he was like, think of that guy. And that started to turn a few lights on. Like, I was able to maybe start 2 or 3 of them. And then he sent the guitar tracks for 1 or 2 of them over and was like this. And it felt more comfortable. And it sort of reordered the song. Like, I was going to do 10 of each.
Oh, wow.
And put out 2 full records. And my friend Alex was like, yeah, that seems like a lot, man. Like, focus on 5 each, and that'll make an album. 10 songs is an album usually. So and I have it here. No Bad News. I didn't end up doing Rain. I didn't end up doing, and the song called Coming Home, I left off because they were not, I couldn't find a way through on them. And then Poor Man's House, I sort of, that was a late inning kind of entry where I was like, this would make sense. Top of the World was the same way. It was, I was trying to, I was missing 2 or 3 to complete the Patty side of things. checked out the old Chicks, the formerly known as the Dixie
Yeah, yeah,
Chicks
yeah.
version of Top of the World, and thought, oh wow, they're harmonizing, and Tim's a great harmony singer. And we ended up with Bartees Strange on that one too, and I was like, oh, okay, they can sort of be the Dixie Chicks on this one,
Oh,
and
okay.
you know what I mean, like
Yeah, yeah,
Bartees
yeah.
and Tim sort of
Right.
singing the way that the two harmony singers sing behind Natalie Maines, and so that was the way we got that one. But it was hard, and like there's,
Well, that
you know,
song
there's
especially, that Top of the World, that last third of the original is just the way that she sings. Her voice is so powerful that it would almost, obviously I'm not a singer or a songwriter, aside from in my dining room table,
yeah,
but that would give me pause to be like, "Yeah, that seems like that's a high bar to try to hit."
it is, yeah. So we just put them in different keys and changed things around, and I tried to think about it more like, well, what, as ideas come as a songwriter, I have to do the same thing, because the
Yeah.
way they sound in my head, uh, oftentimes I'm like, well, I can't deliver that vocal, or you know, so I put them in keys that work for me, for my own songs. And so
Right.
I tried to approach her songs the same way, like, okay, well, what if you had this idea for a song? How would you have tinkered with it? And I think that that's the difference between like the early stuff that I made in the Loved Ones and stuff, and the stuff that I make now is whatever I wrote the guitar riff in back then, I sang. And so I'd be screaming or having to really
Yeah.
reach for notes. And I don't do that anymore. I kind of learned that you can move, you know, transposing and moving
Yeah.
things around works best for your voice. And so it was some exercises in that, and then bouncing it back and forth with Tim. Tim could sort of see a way through on some of them. Like, this is good, go with this. And
It's
that's how
one
we
thing
ended up.
to hit a certain note though, right? But it's another thing to actually have that, uh, like the notes she hits at the end of Top of the World, to keep going back to that song. It's one thing to hit powerful notes, but it's another thing to sing them powerfully, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. The actual delivery itself, it's not just hitting a note, it's the feeling behind it,
Yeah, that's right.
and the sort of weight that that brings to the song. So it's more than, you know, Jewel or Christina Aguilera hitting a high D or whatever. What it's the actual emotion that they sing uh, those words with. And so one of the cool things is that you're able to do that. This is a long way of saying you're able to do that without hitting the same sort of note. You're still able to sing with the same sort of emotion. Like
Well, you have to know your own range,
yeah,
and you sort of need to know where it starts to sound like screaming, or where you'd have to switch to falsetto, or where it's way too low. And what those singers possess is not only an incredible ability to infuse emotion into what they're doing. They have ranges that are
yeah,
super wide. You know, they can sing really high and really low, and I'm not a trained singer. So I know generally what my range is, and I also know that if I'm at the top of that, this is what my voice is going to do, and this is what it, you know, so it'll sound okay if there's a Marshall cranked up behind it and a drum set, but that's not how we're delivering this, you know,
yeah.
like, and so you don't want to be screaming over an acoustic guitar. At least I don't. It doesn't, you know, it sort of sounds incongruent. So a lot of that is just, you know, years of doing it wrong, and then listening back and be like, oh my God, just change the key, you idiot,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
or
right,
tune down, or
right.
it's I mean, the interesting thing is some of the magic of that early phase of people's recorded output is making the mistake, and then you get this weird mix,
Yeah,
you know, where people go, I really like that though, and I'm like, ooh.
right.
So it's
But there's also there's an authenticity to it that
yeah.
you know that does get lost sometimes when people progress in their musical careers and they learn all of the tricks and the techniques and all the things like that. There's an authenticity that gets, like, an album may be better, it may be better produced, the songs may be better written, but they might be missing that sort of spark that the initial stuff had when you didn't really have a clue necessarily, you know.
Yeah, that's sort of the razor's edge you want to walk, is
Yeah,
you know, and sometimes why uh people people who aren't you know better, and they go, no, move it up,
Yeah.
Move it up a step and sing it with that more crazed passion, or in other instances, hey, this shouldn't be that fast, this should be
Yeah.
slowed down and deliberate. And I think that's where you want a trusted team of people that can hear what you can,
Yeah.
and hopefully can hear it how it's going to be heard years in the advance. Like, do you want to live with this recording or this type of delivery? And so that's one of the great benefits of collaboration in music is other people can go, hey, let's move this up or move it down, or whatever, let's put this in let's put it in a waltz or whatever. There's a couple instances on these songs where we really changed the time signatures, and I guess more on the Dillinger Four side of things.
Right.
But and those were really fun things to do.
Where did the idea to bring in people like Brian Fallon and one of my favorite songwriters, Will Hoge, where did that idea come from?
So Fallon and I have never been on the same recording, and
that didn't seem possible. But I know you're correct. That didn't seem possible.
And we really buddied up over this quarantine. We sort of rekindled our friendship. I mean, not that we had not been at odds or anything, but we just hadn't been in as much touch. And I think both of us weren't touring, and we sort of rekindled our flame. He had like a thing like this, like a songwriting thing.
We used to watch it religiously.
Yeah, and I got to do that early on, and we had a great time, and we wrote a couple songs together, and so it was a natural progression. I said, hey, and we had done some solo shows before either of us like had solo careers or whatever, back in 2010, I think, and had a great time. And that was one of the songs we covered, was Long Ride Home. So I was like, hey, do you want to sing on this? So I had Brian was like, yeah, send it over, and that was easy. And then Lily was another idea that I had. She opened a show for us in Philly or something, and I thought she was so awesome and such a great person. And so she agreed as well. And I think Laura Stevenson was another idea that had come to mind. And then once there were three, it was like, well, let's, what the hell, let's see what else we can cook up here. And again, my manager was like, let's think outside the box here. Like, don't call your usual suspects that everyone's going to assume you're going to call. And I was like, okay, well, cool. What do you think? And so he turned me on to just about everybody else. Jake Blount, and who else is on there? Will is a friend, is also a client of his. And I was familiar with Will, and he was like, Will will do it. I bet he'll love the song. And he ended up like falling in love with Dillinger Four, as did John Hyatt, of all people, Lily's dad. Loves Double Whiskey Coke No Ice, which I need to text Patty that. I keep forgetting to send him that, because I've been sending him these updates of like, because Will wrote a song for Amy Grant, the Christian artist. And so I was like, hey dude, like I've been teasing Patty and Eric, like, I'm gonna wreck your band. Like there's a guy that wrote songs for Amy Grant who's singing on one, but
Will's a badass. He's been a fan of mine for a long time. He's a badass. He's for a country singer songwriter or whatever, he's as punk rock as anybody.
He really is. He's terrific. So some of it was just the initial, like, hey, I'll get Brian to do this, or maybe Lily would do this, and then it sort of grew, and it became this kind of more like, trying to ape what hip hop does, where it's like on each track there's like a guest and a new flavor, and it was really fun. It was like it was exciting to be in such a slog with so little going on professionally, and then have like, okay, I sent the track to Bartiz, and I think he's really cool. I'd only heard a couple of his songs by that point, and I knew he was a producer and stuff, and what's he going to send back? And so then to get it and to hear their take, and it was really like exciting. It was like you were waiting by the mailbox for a new thing to arrive. It was fun.
That's cool. That's a cool project. I'm glad that it came out. How has your creativity in terms of your own songwriting been during this quarantine time? Is it, I know a lot of people are sort of overwhelmed by everything going on. It's like, it's sort of overstimulation, but then
Yeah.
some people find that they're most creative. I just talked to Austin Lucas for a long time yesterday, and he wrote a whole new album just since like May, essentially recorded it, and it came out last week. So where do
I
you fit into that?
slow. I
Yeah.
have a lot of the ideas, a lot of the melodic ideas, a lot of the I have the title for the next record. I have a bunch of stuff like that. Some building blocks, some like colors I want to paint with and stuff. But in terms of the lyrical content, um, it's been slow, intentionally slow.
Mm-hmm.
Because we wrote Kick, and that was sort of, how do you deal with the turning of the tide? You know, how do you deal with in America and your fellow man sort of showing their teeth and in a way that we didn't anticipate, and that's terrifying, and I think the wrong way to go as human beings and citizens and so on. And I don't want to write that record again. So we've been anticipating the election and determining whether or not we truly have lost all of our ground as liberally minded democratic people. It doesn't look that way just by a hair. From
the Electoral College standpoint, we're still talking about whether or not a person who got 4 million more votes than the other guy is actually going to be the winner. So from an electoral,
of course, yeah, right, exactly.
It's sort of a slam dunk victory if you're talking most Americans. As most horrifying as it is that 66 million people said yes for the other guy.
Well, yeah, I think that's something I'm still really struggling with.
Yeah, you and me both.
You know, but I think that those will make some decisions lyrically on how to move forward. I mean, I don't want to. Ideally, I'd make a sunnier album, and not knowing when we can tour on it again. Like you make different decisions about what you'll put out, not necessarily what you'll write, but what you'll put out, according to some of these like tent poles or whatever. So I have a lot of unfinished songs, and I think the idea was Wednesday we'd have word and we could start getting to finishing them. Now it looks like it's Friday, and maybe Monday we'll know.
Maybe Christmas.
Maybe Christmas and maybe January, and maybe that really is the universe saying, like, just write your damn songs and let the chips fall where they may, and maybe that's truly what should happen. I mean, I've been really invested in childcare with my sons and attaching with them at a very critical age. You know, that's been more of a priority than songwriting. And then made this other thing, which is a bit of a, let's kick the can down the road. Like, let's wait to write. Because I mean, writing does, once I'm in that headspace, it becomes pretty all consuming. I mean, the week or so that we wrote Your Ghost in the summer was like, I was just so, like, you know, when that light turns on, you're like, you're trying to collect that and channel it and so on. So once that gets going, it's go time. So I guess that's a roundabout answer, but it's been deliberately slow, I guess, would be the way to sum it up.
That Your Ghost, that was a song that you were just talking about, is a song that another one that I think tough to get right because of the responsibility involved, I think, as the songwriter, to figure out sort of what the correct message is in a song like that that's not being exploitative or whatever that word is, and that's sort of putting the emphasis where it needs to be. I texted you at the time. I think you nailed it, but that's got to be, as a songwriter, sort of is it a good challenge to sort of dip your toe into those waters, or is it a thing that makes you like, I really got to be nervous and careful about how I do this?
Well, looking back on it now, it was the first time I've sort of editorialized the songwriting process. I opened it up past Tim and I and played it for a lot of people, other songwriters, African-American friends of mine, community organizers, like people that I didn't know that happened to be in positions of influence. And as I look back on that process, the things that I changed might have defanged it a little bit.
Really?
Well, when you hear Season's Greetings from Ferguson, it coalesces in a moment where I ask if trusting cops is like trusting a priest.
Right.
You look to get saved and get fucked or get fleeced. You know,
right.
that is planting the flag with a question, and it's got teeth. You know, you have to reckon with that. And I think your ghost was successful in that. I don't know. There's a couple lines that I changed, and I'm not sure I should have.
Okay.
And it's hard because you kind of, the way it was delivered was quick, and it didn't hit Spotify's algorithm because there was a delay or something. Something got screwy, and so we lost out on a lot of our followers even hearing the song. And so I'm trying not to let the amount of times it's been heard affect my perception of it. But I do think that it could have gone a step further and been a little bit more of a finger in the eye to the system, you know. And it became more of a lament. It was sadder, I guess, which is, you know, I felt that, and everyone felt that. But I don't think I'll editorialize the songwriting process again to that degree. I mean, I think I was worried, you know, and the first couple people I sent it to were like, do you really want to go here? Do you really want to tackle this? Like, and it was on my heart, it was on my mind, and the only thing that I ever have felt real power in is songwriting and singing, where you can get your thing out to more people than just your surrounding area. So, but it was weird too, because I think when Ferguson came out, it definitely made people more upset. There were people going, "What do you mean?" and cop friends of mine were calling and texting, and this was a little safer, I guess. And in that respect, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm glad that we were able to raise money for charity, and I'm glad that we could make our voice heard. It was bigger than me just lamenting it at home with Tim or Natasha or whatever. But I feel like maybe it could have been sharper.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe, and maybe that's because you know the original drafts and I don't. So the end result is a thing that I think you nailed. I thought you got the tone right, and I thought that it not being sharp actually, to me, was a positive thing, because I think the focus of that song is different than the focus of Ferguson, right? And so I think that if it were sharper, then it maybe would have taken away from George Floyd's involvement in the situation and him being sort of the central. Right. I don't want to say purpose of the song, but the song is called Your Ghost. And so it's theoretically George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all of the countless unfortunate other ones. But I think that if it were sharper, it would have switched the focus a little bit.
That's true. You make a good point. And maybe the song just sort of took over, you know, in that once we got to the chorus and had that down, it was like, well, this is my true hope. I hope that he didn't die in vain. I hope for whatever reason this does provoke change. Why this guy shouldn't have died at all. And hopefully it's hopefully it gets under your skin enough to rethink this and to push against your own preconceived notions and things. So maybe you're right. I don't know.
And to get you out of just checking Twitter and following things on your phone or whatever, but get you to the point where you are actually going to do something,
Right.
So,
right.
To me, it worked for that.
I'm glad. I mean, I'm hoping, again, there's so much noise with the election, and there's so much, just with this president. I'm hoping that if we can get him out of there, we can get back to that work,
right.
that everyone was asking about in the summer. Well, how can we help? And because I think a lot of that messaging became confusing and got co-opted, and hopefully with a little less of the noise there, we can dig in a little more and do more. It would be great to clear some space.
Yeah.
And that guy's taking up a lot of space.
Yeah, boy. Hopefully, like another 2 months. You know what? Hopefully, he walks off into the sunset before that, abdicates the position or something. It's batshit enough that
I'll
feel
take
like
my
it could
ball
happen.
and go home.
Yeah,
I'll take my ball and go home would be great.
Right.
And walking off of a plank as he does it.
Well, yeah, right.
Would be terrific. But I don't know, man. We'll see. I don't think we've heard the last of it, but
no, not for a while. No. Thanks for chatting. I know I don't want to take up too much of your morning, afternoon, whatever it is. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Hey, man, likewise.
The kids
they're
are
great.
Okay?
They're great. They're super fun. Different people that I know that have had twins have said, I remember having lunch early on and with my buddy who's got twins in town, and my buddy Donald, and I said, so when they turn 2, right? And he was like, they turn 3. And I was like, oh, that's when it relents. And he was like, yeah. Thankfully he was wrong. The madness and circus-like nature of having twins has relented. We are operating on a really pretty smooth program, all things considered. I mean, they're wonderful. And, I'm that dad, the helicopter dad who's just trying to keep him safe all the time, and whose whole life changed. And, I set my entire clock to their goings on. And really that's been the silver lining for me of quarantine is making such a secure attachment with them, and being able to get to know them, and it'll be the way that the rest of my path on this earth will be dictated. And I love that. It's been the joy of my life. So they're great. They're super funny and really good natured, and it's a thrill.
And this is when their personality starts to come out too, when they're 2, that's and they probably start to gang up on you and things like that. That's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, they do. Well, sure, they do. It's their sense of humor is really sharp, and has been for a while. And so, I mean, that works both ways. We have a lot of laughs with them. And then they certainly, it's not lost on them when they get our number. So it's been a trip. It's amazing though. I mean, I'm so thankful we had twins, because I wanted 2 children, and I didn't want to repeat the whole, all right, now we got to get the swings and the oh my God, the equipment is just insane. So I'm so thankful that we have this really unique experience, of identical twins and twins either way. And then, because I'm older, I'm 42, and that would have meant by the time, we had 2 kids and they were 4 and 2 or whatever, I would have been deeper into my 40s. So I sort of caught up a little. And it's great. My wife and I have worked well as a team with this totally life-altering development. It's been awesome.
or series of life-altering developments over the last couple of years, because now you're forced together at home too. That's sort of a make or break point. I mean, all of us, we've been really lucky in my house. My daughter's going to be a teenager soon, which all of a sudden I have an almost 13-year-old. But I think it's been a really good thing being home together for the last 8 months. Like we do really well. We have our own little corners that we can respectively go to if we need to, and then come together. And she's old enough now to be able, she was in class, she's in her bedroom because she's on the computer, but she was texting me election updates today, and she took a screenshot of Pennsylvania when it switched to blue, and she circled it. She's like, look. And part of me is like, yes, and part of me is like, you're supposed to be in class right now. I became that dad that's like, put your phone away, kid. You're supposed to be in science class or whatever. But
well, that's good dad work.
Right.
Yeah, on both fronts. She's concerned as a citizen, and also you're keeping her on task. So no, man, it's great. I don't know how I'll go back to touring with any regularity without a total broken heart. When we are allowed, that's the thing. We keep yearning to go back to work, and then I'm like, but then I'll be back to work and my kids won't be there. So it's funny just how things pan out, and how you respond to them and react. It's a long and winding road.
It sure is. Thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it. It's always a
great
pleasure.
To see you, man. Stay safe, and try to enjoy that winter that's coming on the East Coast. It's
who knows if it's coming. It didn't snow last year, so
right.
It snowed in like October and March last year, and it barely snowed between. And I'm not making that up. Like, it didn't really snow in between here. It was
crazy,
weird. It's not good. I mean, as nice as it is to be able to go outside because it's 50 degrees at Christmas, it's not good.
No,
it's a really bad thing.
Right. Yeah, man. Well, keep the faith. It's great to see you, and thanks for covering the EPs.
Of course, always.
See you soon, man.
Bye. Thank you again.